Good afternoon, Rotarians and guests. Welcome to the start of our Rotary 2021. I'm Bev Brock and I'm your MC for today's meeting of the Rotary Melbourne. We'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri and the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation and also pay our respects to elders past, present and future, and extend that respect to all Indigenous Australians present today. Please note that most microphones have been muted for the duration of the presentation. However, accolades, comments and questions can be posted via the Zoom chat function throughout the presentation. Thanks today will be given by Barbara Yerondo, followed by the Loyal Toast presented by President Marion. So please ensure that your glass is charged, and off we go.
Thank you, Bev. I have to confess I was a little, after holidaying and a big year that we've had, thinking about what we could talk about as a reflection today. And then I heard an old song come on the radio, and those of you who are older than me probably remember all the words, but the most important thing that I had that came to my mind was, you can't always get what you want, but you'll find sometime, you just might find you'll get what you need. Which made me started thinking, what is it that we need? And what is it that we only need? So I'd like to share with you some of the thoughts of what we actually need. In a time of record homelessness, let's be grateful for our home. In a time where many of the world's population don't have safe drinking water, be grateful that we have safe drinking water. When more than half the world's population live in poverty, that's about 3 billion people. Be grateful that we have some money in the bank and are able to get by daily. More than 8 million people don't have enough to eat. So let's be grateful that we live healthy and we eat well. I'm also grateful that I have good family and friends who love and support me, and I show that in return. I'm also grateful for my good health, and I will never take that for granted. I'm also grateful for the mistakes that I've made in my life and the lessons that I've learned from the mistakes. So let's start the year thinking about what we have ahead of us and not ponder too much on what has passed, to give us an opportunity to be happy in this time and just show a little gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. A very lovely thanks. And unfortunately, I do remember the song. Rotarians and guests, a toast to Australia and Rotary International. Australia and Rotary International. Well, welcome everyone. Members, visitors and guests, it's my great pleasure to welcome you to our 25th meeting in our 100th year and to wish you all the very best for 2021. I trust you all managed to have a festive and restful break. We had hoped to be able to announce when we would have our first blended meeting with both online and face-to-face, but unfortunately we've had to defer this and we'll be continuing with our online meetings for a little while yet. Our guest speakers today are our honorary member, Kazuyoshi Matsunaga, recently returned Consulate-General of Japan in Victoria, and Tim Stone, journalist and documentary filmmaker. Both will be more fully introduced by our chairman, past President Chris Wong, later in the program. We also have some special guests from Haileybury College, hosted by Christina Boyce of our Welfare of the Young Committee. These Year 12 students, Manik Barak and Samarth Ram Ragasvendra, are joined by District 9800 Muna Chair, Neville Page. Neville allocated our club with the sponsorship of Haileybury College in the Muna event. That's the Model United Nations Assembly. And these amazing students won. We bask in their reflected glory, and we'll be hearing from all three of them shortly. Also here, we have Helen Moylan and her sponsor, Sue McCarthy. Helen will be our first induction of 2021 in our centenary year. Please join me in making all of our guests welcome. And now to the induction of Helen Moylan into membership of Rotary Melbourne. Could I ask Helen's sponsor, Sue McCarthy, to formally introduce Helen to the club?
President Marion, it gives me much pleasure to introduce the membership of the club, Helen Moylan, who holds the position of archivist at Melbourne Girls Grammar School and will have the classification of archival services / archivist. She will be a member of the Toorak #1 group and will be known in the club as Helen.
Thank you, Sue. Helen Moylan, we welcome you as a member of the Rotary Club of Melbourne. Today, you enter an organisation of more than 1.2 million members in over 35,000 clubs in more than 200 countries, embracing the internationality of Rotary. We believe that you have the personal and professional qualities that will ensure the principles of Rotary will be safe in your keeping. The Rotary badge, which I hope you will wear with pride and has been couriered to you, indicates your commitment to the object of Rotary to which we all aspire, to encourage the ideal of service above self. We expect that you will become an ambassador from us into the community in which you live, and we ask that you convey Rotary's aims in all that you do. We look forward to your pursuing with us the great work of Rotary. So with this expectation, we offer you the right hand of fellowship and ask that members join me in welcoming you to the membership of our club. Welcome. And now I invite you to say a few words. Over to you, Helen.
Good afternoon, Madam President and members, and thank you, Sue, for your introduction and for your efforts to facilitate my membership. I'm on my phone as my home internet has collapsed today just at the right time, so if the phone wobbles, I apologise. I'm delighted that I've been accepted as a member of this iconic club, which has a special significance for me. My father, Eric Banks, was a lifelong Rotarian. Due to the nature of his work, he actually belonged to a number of different Rotary clubs in different countries. But he joined this Melbourne club in '72 when we came to Melbourne, leaving in '75 when he was posted to Japan, returning in the '90s and remaining a member until he was incapacitated by poor health. So I grew up with a sound understanding of the philanthropic and community service work that's undertaken by Rotarians and in particular this club. And an appreciation of the tremendous contribution made by Rotarians globally to the health and well-being of communities. Peter Addison has kindly volunteered to be my mentor, and I'm looking forward to locating the appropriate committees to harness my particular interest in women and the welfare of children. I've also been given very strong hints that the historical records of this club need some attention. And I may be strong-armed into some archival service there. So thank you. I look forward very much to meeting you all in person when the time comes and participating in all that this wonderful club has to offer. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen, and welcome to the club. I think you're right. I think we may be putting you to work sooner than you think. So let's now take a look at a past member profile, one who promoted and lived the internationality of Rotary, Frank Newman. Lovely. I now call on our Club Muna contact, Christina Boyce, to more fully introduce our Muna guests. Over to you, Christina.
I would just like to welcome Manik and Sammy to the club. What happened there? I can't see. Yeah, thank you. I'll start again. I'd like to welcome Manik and Sammy to the club. They were the winning team at Muna last year representing France. in a minute or two, they will both speak. Manik will speak first and Sammy will speak after him. And I'd also like to welcome Neville Page, who's the District Chairman of Moona, to the meeting. And I hope that in the future, Manik and Sammy will become Rotarians or join Rotaract or even do the Rotary Youth Leadership Award program. Over to Manik.
Thanks, Christina. Well, I mean, I just want to first thank everyone here for making the whole program possible and working behind the scenes to keep it running so smoothly. I hope everyone is having a great New Year. And when I say everyone, I'm referencing the 15 Reg Smiths here. So a little bit about my experiences at Moona. Although it was online this year for obvious reasons, I think it was still conducted really systematically and professionally, which then led to an overall smooth program for the weekend. And it was, of course, really great to get to meet, speak, and then finally debate with so many interesting and intelligent people. But apart from the social aspect of getting to mingle with new faces, the fact that the arguments so many people presented were clearly logical and valid made me realize that there's so many factors of like part of one issue. And this showed me that solving a problem can't be done with a single track mindset, if you can say so. So you really have to consider all possibilities and outcomes, which now reflecting on it is a pretty important skill to have in life, I'd say. And another thing I learned from debating here would be the obvious speaking skills and overall confidence I developed by leaving my comfort zone and debating on topics in front of people I'd never met before. So in any situation in life, it would definitely be beneficial to be able to comfortably socialize and really get your point across. Now, from what I've seen in my own experience, Moona really, apart from socializing and building speaking skills, is about educating people on the United Nations. So this means like showing what they do, how they do it, and literally just how important the United Nations are in world peace. And I definitely gathered all of this from debating here. And I don't think I realized before coming to Moona and debating here just how vital the United Nations role is in committing to everything. And specifically, I quote from the UN itself, peace, dignity, and equality on a healthy planet. And they do this, just like we had, by discussing and scrutinizing resolutions. But now, what I really want to set up taken away as my biggest lesson or experience, as I already mentioned before, is that the UN, along with everyone in day-to-day life, face problems and conflicts that of course need resolving. And you can't rush blindly into anything without considering all the impacts of your decision. And while I was debating, I was picking up on this idea. So I made sure to acknowledge in my arguments for each resolution that any issue isn't as simple as X, Y, or Z. So we need to look at things wholly and then make considerations. So yeah, again, thank you for the opportunity to hear me speak today and also for your contribution to running Moona. Thanks everyone.
Go ahead.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're having a wonderful day today. Thank you to Christina for inviting me and Manik here. It's a pleasure to be amidst this Rotary Club gathering. It's a very novel experience for us since this is the first time we've been a part of this cohesive Rotary group, but it's a wonderful one. So today, all I wanted to talk about is a bit about my experience doing the Model UN with Manik. He's already summed up everything very authentically, so my experience will be basically along the same lines. So I'll be totally honest, when I signed up for the Model UN, or when my teacher asked me to fill these forms for the Rotary Club UN competition, I didn't expect more than just a debating competition, albeit with a few more people and country representations. I'm sure even Manik would have felt the same initially because we didn't really have much experience with this initially. But what we truly got to take part in was completely mind-blowing. We had the opportunity to represent France this year. And over the course of the program, I think we became more French than natives. It was a genuine chance to explore some key issues that world leaders discuss on the global forum every day. And the research that we did was really fascinating. The pride that automatically grabs you by the arm when you represent a country in such a competition is hard to express. It gives you the courage to express your views candidly, but with logic. And that's the captivating part about this. Even more attractive were the other delegates who took part. So I'm sure Neville would agree, the Zoom component made the conversations, the block meetings, the rebuttals, and the points of order very, very entertaining. Meeting like-minded people who also want to debate about global issues was very motivating. It served as a reminder that we have the potential to create a good change in the world on a larger scale. Ultimately, though, I'd say the highlight of this entire experience for me was the practicality of the resolutions that we debated. Ranging from COVID-19 to Israel, Palestine to coal renewability, I think we had a very good time trying to convince the others to agree with our point of view. Especially one of the main things that stood out was the fact that a simple issue such as coal renewability could be debated from different points of view. So, for example, Somalia as a country from Africa would have said coal is their staple and they would not be ready to let go of that. But a country that is really going forward in the future and trying to work on renewable resources would have said we would like to go ahead with electricity as a form of very renewable energy sources. So all in all, it was a weekend of wisdom. So given this, I'd strongly encourage others to also participate in this event in the future because of the unparalleled experience that anyone can get by debating as a global citizen in such a platform. So this echoes something that always rings back to me, Mahatma Gandhi's slogan, be the change you wish to see. So once again, I thank all of you for having us here today. Now handing over to the one and only Neville, without whom the model UN wouldn't have run as seamlessly as it did. Thank you.
Done. Sweet. Thank you. Just before Sammy, before we go over to Neville, I'd just like to thank you both for your very articulate presentations. They were very enjoyable and very knowledgeable. And I hope you are ambassadors for Muna at your school. Thank you. Neville, over to you.
Thanks, Christine. Look, well, Model United Nations is a program that's focused on Year 11 students, occasionally have Year 12 or Year 10 students as well, and it's carried on around the world and particularly in most districts in Australia. It's normally done as an in-person weekend event. Some districts use a venue where the students attend both days and then go home in between. In our district, we've usually done it as a live-in camp format. It attracts students that are interested in public speaking and current affairs. Now, some schools already have debating programs, and so are well set up to enter a team. And for the students selected, it's a great opportunity to debate students from schools from all over Melbourne and Victoria. Schools provide a team of 2 students, and they're given a country that they are to represent. They're then given mock United Nations resolutions to debate, and they have to argue their case as if they were from that country, which may require them putting forward arguments that are completely the opposite to their own views. So that everyone gets plenty of opportunities to speak, it is best not to have too many teams. The advantage of the Rotary Club, for the Rotary Club, is that apart from the giving 2 students a great opportunity, you also get to create a link to a local school, and you also have 2 students that can speak in public and come back to your club, as you've just experienced. And of course, this year was completely different. With students having to spend so much time on homeschooling in front of their computers, I was told that they wouldn't be interested in spending another weekend in December if they didn't have to do so. So in the end, I still proceeded, but I cut the event down to debating only 4 resolutions a day, and with each team only having to debate 3 of the 4. And I cut the team numbers down to 16 instead of about 24 to 30. We also had a team from Wellington in New Zealand and from India as well, and so we had to work in with their time zones. The Melbourne E-Club ran the Zoom technology for the event, as well as live streaming it on Facebook so everyone could watch it. And being the centenary of Rotary in Australia and New Zealand, I particularly wanted your club to be represented as well as the team from New Wellington. So as it turned out, my club of North Melbourne had 2 teams from Haileybury College City campus, and so we gave up 1 to your club, and they were Manic and St Marf, and of course they won the event. So our club were very pleased about that, because probably would have been embarrassing as the host club to have the winning team. In the national Muna in Canberra, if that goes ahead in August this year, then I will be taking Manik and Samarth up there to represent this district. The whole Canberra experience is very impressive for the students. I usually get them into an embassy and I get them into Duntroon to visit that as well. It's quite interesting for them to see that actually as a tertiary option, because it's one where you can get very well educated and get paid at the same time. Of course, there are certain commitments if you do that. And they also visit the Australian National University and debate in the old Parliament House. So look, that's a brief overview of Muna. I didn't want to go too deeply because I'm not the guest speaker for today. But look, it was a very challenging experience this year to run it on Zoom, and we just took on the challenge, and I think it worked very well. We had some guest speakers, and the standard was very high. I mean, you've seen the winning team, but you know, I think Samarth and Manik would agree there were at least 3 or 4 other teams that were pretty much up at the same level. It was interesting after day one, as the judges got together and were assessing who was the best individual and the best team. This team wasn't actually very highly rated as the best team because at that point only one of the 2 had spoken, and then the next day the other one spoke for the whole 3, and they were both excellent each day. So it ended up a great team effort, and I congratulate Manik and Samarth on their great performance and then on winning the event. If it was in person, I'd be giving them a certificate, but I just don't think it's the same in this environment. So I'd like to wait for an opportunity where we can meet in person so that I can present them with a certificate. So that's it.
Thank you. Thank you, Neville and Christina. Christina for watching the entire United Nations, and Neville for giving us the winning team. And well done to our team France of Samarth and Manik. You made us proud. Thank you. Today's Did You Know is a bit of a quirky fact. In 1921, the club purchased a piano and invited Mr. Cyril Mee as a visitor to lead the first club singing. Alberto Zellman, the conductor of the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra, was appointed musical director. He invited select members to form a choir to lead the singing. And within 2 years, the singing had a fixed place on the luncheon agenda. In fact, "Will the choir please assemble" was greeted with much more enthusiasm than accepting first name acquaintances. So there you go. And now to our club notices. There's an Australia Day event on the 26th of January. The District 9800 has notified us that we are to be involved in the Rotary Australia Main Day event. And that's going to be held at Nossal High School, Berwick, on Tuesday, the 26th of January from 12:30 to 2 p.m. with a barbecue lunch to follow. They're looking for assistance from those clubs that are involved with them to provide up to 20 volunteers. And they're asking us if we could find 10 volunteers within our club to support them in the preparation, in the serving, and in the cleanup for around 100 lunch participants. Volunteers are required from 1 o'clock to 5:30 on the day, and the detailed tasks will be outlined once we know who the volunteers are. Further details on this can be found in the bulletin, or you can email Chris Stillwell if you'd like to be involved. Last year, we had a couple of runs of the Homeland Story, and there's now a commercial television screening of the Rotary Melbourne produced Homeland Story that will be screening this Sunday, January the 17th at 8:30 on NITV. We're very proud of our association with the Indigenous community of Donaghey in Northeast Arnhem Land, featured in the documentary, and would encourage you all, if you can get a chance, to have a look at that. I'd also like to just highlight a global grant. Ruth Carlos Martinez, with the support of Peter Addison, has been working very hard with the Rotary Club of Lubang Island to get a global grant project approved to provide a medical van for virus testing, screening, and vaccine immunization. Her global grant application for $36,000 has finally been approved by the Rotary Foundation. The IPC agreed to support the project, and contributing funds are coming from our budget, District 9800, the Rotary Club of Lubang Island, District 3810, and of course, the Global Grant. Now, in Ruth's words, the implementation can begin. And on that note, it's now my pleasure to hand over this meeting to our chairman, past President Chris Wong, to further introduce today's guest speakers. Chris.
Thank you, President Marion. This week's meeting will be a little bit different because we're having two guest speakers. Our first guest speaker is our honorary member, Consul-General Kazuyoshi Matsunaga, who was Consul General for Japan in Melbourne for the past 3 years and 8 months. Known to the club as Kazu took great interest in club affairs. For example, he and his wife Yoko regularly attended Turek One group events. He assisted past President Peter Rogers with the Australian Regenerative Medicine Institute Symposium in Melbourne last October, a collaboration between Osaka and Monash universities. And the highlight event for all club presidents during Kazu's term in office was attending the Emperor's birthday celebration at the Consul General's residence in Turek. Kazu was supposed to be our guest speaker today, but unfortunately, he and his wife Yoko have been recalled to Japan, and that happened on the 6th of January. However, Kazu, in his inimitable way, has provided an interesting and entertaining farewell video, which we will play now.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to speaking at the first Rotary Club lunch meeting of year 2021. I wish I could be there with you in person, but by the time you are watching this video, I would have returned to Japan. Before I begin, I would like to wish everyone a happy new year. Year 2020 was an extremely difficult year, so I hope that this year will be a great one for everyone. Today after my speech, Mr. Tim Stone will be giving a presentation about the Cyprus, a Tasmanian convict ship. The ship's visit to Japan is said to be the first recorded contact between Japan and Australia, which happened 191 years ago in 1830 in Tokushima, west part of Japan. Before this discovery, it was believed that the first contact between our two countries was when an Australian whaling vessel arrived in Hokkaido in 1831. This very first encounter was unfriendly, as Japan was going through a long period of isolation from the outside world at that time, and consequently drove the Cyprus away. It is believed that samurai fired several cannons at the Cyprus, damaging it enough so that the vessel later sank. Despite this unfavorable start, to this day, Japan and Australia had become one of the closest and strongest allies based on mutual understanding and friendship. For instance, in last September, Prime Minister Scott Morrison was the very first world leader to speak with Japanese Prime Minister Suga Yoshihide after he took his office, showcasing the strong partnership and alliance between Japan and Australia. Prime Minister Morrison also visited Japan in November last year to meet Prime Minister Suga in person, which was the first meeting with a foreign leader for Prime Minister Suga in Japan. Since 1996, the sister club relationship between the Rotary Club of Melbourne and the Rotary Club of Osaka has flourished and matured more and more each year. It is through the support from both Rotary clubs that many international exchanges of delegation and students have been made possible. Many Japanese and Australian people have visited each other's cities to experience the life and culture, fostering and strengthening people-to-people ties at the grassroots level. I am sure that each and every person who was involved in these exchanges, regardless of whether you are organizing or participating, had a very rewarding experience, and that everyone has a fond memory of these times. Once again, I would like to thank all the Rotary Club members for your effort and commitment to maintaining this special connection to Japan. Your work has formed an important part of Japan and Australia relationships, and I hope that you will all continue maintaining such relations in the years to come. On the topic of exchange programs, one episode I would like to mention is about His Majesty the Emperor Naruhito, the current Emperor of Japan, and Mr. Andrew Ackley. Emperor Naruhito had his first overseas trip in 1974, and coincidentally, the destination was Melbourne. A year later, 1975, Mr. Ackley, who was from Melbourne, visited Japan as an exchange student of the Rotary International. During this time, Mr. Ackley became friends with the Emperor, then Prince Naruhito. They remained as friends for a long time, and Mr. Ackley recently published a book titled, Your Majesty, What Shall We Talk About Today? Lastly, it was my great honor to be able to take on new challenges and interact with many people here, including everyone I met at the Rotary Club of Melbourne over the past 3 years and 8 months. I have mentioned many times to Japanese people about the MCG in Melbourne, an acronym I invented during my time in Melbourne. My MCG does not mean the Melbourne Cricket Ground, but it is about the multicultural, camaraderie, and generosity nature of Melbourne. And it is this factor that made my posting in Melbourne very enjoyable. I would like to offer my sincere gratitude to all the members for your passion to make the Japan-Australia relationship stronger, and wish everyone all the best for their future endeavors. Thank you very much. ありがとうございました。
Well, I think that was a fantastic farewell video from Kazu, and we'll be passing on our thanks to him and wish him all the best for his next posting. As mentioned by Kazu, our next speaker and guest is Tim Stone. Tim is a documentary filmmaker, content producer, and broadcast journalist with extensive knowledge of television, feature film, and digital production. His documentaries, short films, and comedy series have screened at a number of prestigious film festivals around the world, including Cannes Court Metrage in France, Raindance Film Festival in London, the third Annual Streamy Awards in Los Angeles, and St Kilda Film Festival. Most recently, Tim's company, Gatherer Media, produced wartime stories from the exhibition buildings, 5 short documentaries in commemoration of the 75th anniversary of World War II in Melbourne, for the Melbourne Museum and the Department of Premier and Cabinet. In 2019, he co-produced Through Samurai Eyes, a 2-part 1-hour documentary about the subject that he's going to talk to today regarding the Brig Cyprus. So I'd like to now introduce Tim, and he'll speak to you about the Brig Cyprus. Tim is happy to take questions after his presentation, which can be posted through the chat room. Now over to you, Tim.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks Rotary Melbourne for having me for today. That's great. I really appreciate it. Kazuyoshi Consul-General contacted me late last year to ask if I would do this, knowing that he was about to leave the country. And I've had a long and involved process. He's been involved in this process for a long time. He's been really championing this story because it was part of his jurisdiction, part of Victoria and Tasmania. And we really wouldn't have got as far as we have without his involvement. So Kazuyoshi, I thank him very much, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak to you guys today. So I need to share my screen with you. So I'll just start that process. I'm showing a couple of images in this presentation that are still under embargo. So if someone could just clarify how widely will this presentation be shared? It's just one image, I could just remove it. How widely will this Zoom be shared? If someone could just let me know.
Tim, we can edit the video.
Okay, it's just one image. It's got confidential written on it, so it's quite clear. But if you wouldn't mind removing that, they'll come out in the next couple of months. But I really wanted to show them to you today. But I just want to kind of keep a lid on them before they get out any further than that. So I very much appreciate that. So I'll share my screen with you and we'll start this presentation. So bear with me. On the 4th of November, 1830, a large crowd had gathered outside the Old Bailey in the hope they might catch a glimpse of 5 men believed to have returned from the penal colony of Van Diemen's Land. The 5 men were William Watts, George James Davis, Alexander Stevenson, John Beveridge, and William Swallow. All 5 were on trial, charged with piracy of the Cyprus, a convict ship seized while transporting prisoners from Hobart Town to Macquarie Harbour on the 14th of August, 1829. Although 18 men had taken part in the seizure of the Cyprus, only these 5 had made it back to England. If found guilty, they faced death by hanging. Now, what happened at the trial is important to our story. While 4 of the men denied their identity or kept their mouths shut during the trial, William Swallow gave a full and detailed account of the seizing of the Cyprus in Tasmania, its voyage across the Pacific to Japan, and how it was scuttled and sunk. Although his account of the Cyprus's journey to Japan was widely reported in the Times and other papers of the days, without corroborating evidence, he was never believed, except in folklore. There is this song, the seizure of the Cyprus Brig in Research Bay is a famous folklore song. It's often been performed. It's one of the banned songs of the convict era. And in various versions of it include a line about sailing to Japan. I want to share with you an incredible piece of history that connects the people of Tokushima, Japan, to the people of Hobart, Tasmania, and the people of Japan, to the people of Australia. This is a story that first came to light in 2017 after British-born, Japan-based Nick Russell spent the best part of 4 years trying to identify the British ship involved in an 11-day encounter with fishermen and samurai in Tokushima Prefecture and recorded in 6 samurai manuscripts, of which I'll show you excerpts from 3 today. What is remarkable is that after all that work, Nick solved this 200-year-old or nearly 200-year-old local mystery with a simple 2-word Google search: mutiny in 1829. In that action, did not only Nick solve a local mystery, he also connected the samurai's account of the British ship with William Swallow's testimony and solved one of Australia's greatest convict escape stories. This is William Swallow's petition, and this is features discussion about Japan. And this is one of the most, this is one of the documents that links directly to the manuscripts I've just shown you, we've just glimpsed over. This encounter between the convicts and samurai is important, not just because it was the first, but also because it happened at the height of Japan's isolationist period, or sakoku. There were other foreign arrivals at this time, but not many, and the manuscripts and Swallow's testimony give us first-hand account of first contact between these two cultures, and that's incredibly unique. What they reveal is a generosity of spirit, compassion, and curiosity for each other. This, apart from the final repulse of the vessel by the samurai, was a mostly peaceful encounter. No lives were lost, despite the circumstances. So who are these convicts that we're talking about? On the 14th of August, 1829, 18 of 13 convicts seized control of the Cyprus Brig in Research Bay in southeast Tasmania. From there, they sailed to New Zealand, Tonga, Tahiti, and the Marshall Islands before arriving in Japan. Their captain was William Swallow, who was also known as William Brown, William Walker, and Captain Waldron. In fact, he had many aliases. In this image, you can actually see the Cyprus Brig. And if you read the notation on the page, it's one of only Augustus Earl and the samurai artists are the only people that have actually kind of drawn an image of the convict brig, the Cyprus. It's center in the frame. In his 39 short years, he was transported to the colonies 3 times and successfully escaped back to England twice. Quite a remarkable feat. His story alone is, without the journey to Japan, is absolutely incredible. The convicts arrived at the height of maritime restrictions, shortly after a British ship had forced itself into Nagasaki harbour and attempted to land. In response, the shogun tightened restrictions further by issuing this edict. All foreign vessels should be fired upon. Any foreigner who landed should be arrested or killed on sight. Every interaction should be reported in the utmost detail. With our pirates on the run from the British and the samurai opposed to British expansion into Asia, the pirates and samurai had much in common. Now, where this encounter took place is important. Tokushima is a prefecture on Shikoku, an island in southeastern Japan. The largely fishing communities where this incident took place are still relatively remote. This is a long way from Tokyo, from Hiroshima, from Osaka, from Nagoya. Had the convicts arrived in Edo, Osaka, Nagasaki, the outcomes of this visit would no doubt have been completely different. Now, fishing communities have a natural compassion to shipwreck sailors and fishermen blown off course because they understand them, and this certainly was the case here. So how do you balance that community response when the shogun has ordered you to shoot first and ask questions later? Now, this was the dilemma facing local samurai commanders Yamauchi and Mima when the Cyprus appeared on the 5th of January, 1830. Now, the late Edo period was one of the most peaceful and prosperous times in Japan's history. In peacetime, samurai studied poetry and art, and for this reason, we have 6 meticulous manuscripts. An illustrated account of a foreign ship by Hamaguchi Makuta. A foreign ship drifts into Mugi Cove by Hirota Kanzaimon. And this is the one that's confidential, but the untitled Hayami manuscript. For the first 2 days, the Cyprus remained a safe distance from shore. But on the 7th of January, they made 3 attempts to land, but each time were driven off with musket fire. But whatever suspicions the locals had, they quickly turned to compassion after contact was made. Everyone who gets closer to the barbarian ship returns feeling pity for them, stated Samurai Commander Mima. After one man was seen crying, they were given water and 100 kilograms of rice, which was an incredibly generous gesture for that time. They were initially offered 10 times this amount. On January 9, they received water from a fishing boat while heading west. Fishermen have a long tradition of helping seafarers. On January 14, somewhere between Hiwasa and Mugi, another curious local fisherman, Harada, rowed out to see the visitors for himself. The foreigners then tossed some things down into our boat, including something shaped like this. Later, Sauro, a local samurai, went out to meet with them. They beckoned and asked for water and firewood. We gave them what little we had, and then one of the Dutchmen offered a picture of a woman, gunpowder, and what appeared to be a gold-coated bell. An object so beautiful I could not contain my desire to hold it, and he literally couldn't hold it. As I was returning the bell, it fell into the ocean, and the Dutchman became most angry, so we paddled off quickly. But the foreigners could not stay. Disguise yourself as fishermen, get close to the barbarian ship, and draw me a detailed picture of anything that looks like a weapon, or yamauchi. As we approached the barbarian ship, the dog wagged its tail and whined at us. It did not look like food. It looked like a pet. But instead of weapons, the samurai were welcomed aboard and treated courteously. When we removed hand towels from our heads, the men removed their hats, most of them revealing balding heads. They were treated to convict hospitality. One of them brought out a big glass of what appeared to be an alcoholic beverage and indicated that we should drink. We declined, upon which they passed the glass around themselves one by one, tapping their heads as they drank to indicate the good feeling it brought to them, and finished the lot. But when Hamaguchi returned, the samurai commander spotted something in his drawings that shocked him. The British flag. This was the turning point. Take a large lead ball out to the ship and tell them that if they don't leave immediately, we'll fire on them and reduce them to matchwood, he ordered Samurai Commander Yamauchi. The pirates pleaded for more time, but the samurai's patience was exhausted. On Tebejima Island, a cannon fired a shot that sailed between the Cyprus's two masts. I've underlined here where it corresponds to Swallow's petition. Two more shots were fired, one connected with the hull. The pirates gestured that the wind was no good. In a final act of grace, Yamauchi allowed the ship to be towed to a place where the breeze would pick up. One later entry reads, as dusk fell, a strange beguiling pipe and singing could be heard as the offshore breeze arrived from the mountains behind Mugi and carried the barbarian ship back out to sea. Just as the samurai manuscripts have remained hidden from Western eyes, the fate of the Cyprus and her crew was unknown in Japan until this discovery. These are two pieces of information that have existed in isolation. As Nick has reached out to descendants of the samurai, including Hirota and Hayami, he has witnessed firsthand a great weight lift as descendants realised their ancestors' actions did not send these men to their deaths. In the end, it was the British penal system. So what happened to these men? In Swallow's petition to Sir Robert Peel, he gives a detailed account of what happened to the 18 men aboard the Cyprus. Back in London, of the 5 men standing trial for the piracy of the Cyprus, William Swallow was the only one found not guilty. Watts and Davis were executed in London at Constitution Dock and were the last of 2 men to be executed under piracy laws. Beveridge and Stevenson and Swallow were all sent back to Tasmania. Swallow resides in Tasmania on the island of the Dead, just off the shore at Port Arthur, in an unmarked grave. Now, we believe that this story has the power to connect people. For me personally, this history connects two places I hold a deep affinity for: Hobart, where I lived and went to university, and Japan, where my partner Aya is from, and whose family just happened to live around the corner from Nick, who discovered these manuscripts. Now, through this history, we've connected with many others, including Consul-General, the Consul-General, and many others as we've moved on this journey together. And there's still a long way to go. This year, we've received a DFAT grant, Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade grant, which has helped bring those other manuscripts to life. So that we've found, when I initially did this presentation, there were 2 manuscripts, there's now 6, and 4 of them are actually illustrated, and I've shown you one of the ones that's still embargoed today. There is another to come as part of that. But very few people know about this story. When they hear about it, most desperately want to know more, and that's exactly how I feel. This is an important piece of history that we hope will create new people-to-people links between Tasmania and Tokushima and Australia and Japan. As mentioned in the intro, there's a 2-part, if you're interested, this is a 2-part radio documentary series we produced for ABC in 2019. And we travelled to Japan and we meet Nick, and we travelled to Tebejima Island and we meet some of the people involved and some of the descendants of people involved. And then in the 2nd episode, we head to Tasmania and discover more about William Swallow and his story. That concludes my formal presentation. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you today. And I'm sorry about it was a bit rough. I've kind of rejigged things and changed images at the last minute, but I hope you found that interesting and I've at least inspired you to want to know a little bit more about the Cyprus story.
Thanks, Tim. It was very, very informative. You wouldn't have thought that such a situation would lead to where it is today. Now, if there are any questions coming through the chat room, let me see. Let's see if I can find any questions. Sorry about this. I'm just scrolling through the chat room. I actually do have a question, Tim. There were 18 of the convicts who took the vessel. You mentioned 5 of them. The other 13, what did happen to them? How did they end up?
It's some of them have disappeared, never to be found again. I think 7 of them, 7 or 9 of them disappeared, believed to have made their way to South America and to America. So there is some further research to be done. It's hopeful that through things like ancestry.com and DNA registers, perhaps lineages of descendants of the convicts in the UK might actually lead to these people in the future. But there's a lot of unknowns, a lot of things that remain unclear what happened here, and it's quite exciting that the prospect that may actually be something that comes forward. There's also actually detailed information about where the Cyprus was scuttled. So there is, depending on how big this story or the level of interest in this story, perhaps we could even one day find the ship itself.
Are there any other questions from anybody? No?
How long have I been working on this? I started in 2017 when Nick's article appeared in The Guardian. It actually triggered a memory. Having lived in Tasmania, having been to Research Bay where there's signage about the story, having read The Fatal Shore, Robert Hughes's The Fatal Shore, I remembered this. There's a little mention of the Japan connection in Robert Hughes's The Fatal Shore. It all lined up, and my partner was about to go to Japan. let's contact Nick and see if he wants to do something, and he did.
I see. That's very interesting. Another question I had was, again, to do with the remaining convicts. When they scuttled the boat, or when the boat was fired on and it sunk, where did they go? Did they swim to shore, or what? And what did the Japanese or
they went to Wampao and to the I'm going to get the name wrong, but the not British India, the India
East India
Company. I'm very sorry. I was trying to reconcile the file name with the place. The East India Company.
Yes.
In what is present day Hong Kong. There's actually testimony that William Swallow gave under a different name, telling about the story to Japan, to there. So, and in two separate groups, they went back to England. They lied about who they were. They claimed they were from another ship, and they got free passage back to England on in two groups. The first group came in, lied about their identity, sent back to England as free men. Another group came in, botched up the story, and they figured out they were convicts that had escaped. That ship they were sent on a ship back to England. That ship got in first. William Swallow jumped off at Wapping, or earlier than the ship actually boarded, at its final destination, disappeared for 2 months. Such was his character. There's another question about the food. The ship that they stole had 3 months plus of supplies to take to Macquarie Harbour. It had clothing, it had an ample amount of food. What it didn't have was enough firewood and fresh water. That's what they wanted. Japanese were offering them food. They didn't want food. They had so much of it. They had live cattle on the ship, but they needed water and they needed wood. But if you're going to choose a vessel to go on, it would be a fully loaded, prisoner transport ship.
Well, maybe the last question, Tim. There's one from Barbara Yaranditis. I'm assuming that you are preparing a detailed documentary of this story history. When will we be able to view it? We're still going through development, so we're going through another phase of applying for development money this year with an animator from Tasmania to sort of bring some of the stories to life. From that process, we then need to get more funding to actually make the documentary. It's a very long process. It could be 3, 4, 5 years, or it could all fall over if we can't kind of, finance it properly. History is not very popular on Australian television at the moment, so that's one of the big issues. There's only 2 places that fund documentary, SBS and ABC. History is not their bag. It's too expensive, and they feel that the audiences aren't into it. So this comes in seasons and waves, so we'll wait for a shift around, I think. All right. Well, thank you, Tim. I'd like to thank you for a most fascinating and unusual piece of early Tasmanian Australian history. The fortitude of the convicts in some way was to be commended. And I can understand why it was considered such a myth for so long. Anyway, Tim, I don't know if you know, but this year, 2021, is our centenary year. So our club is 100 years old this year. And as such, we have a special gift for our guest speakers. And it's what we call a limited edition R100 centenary socks. And we say that they're 200% Australian made in Preston by our past president, Phil Endersby of Wilderness Wear. Unfortunately, I cannot present them to you today personally, but we will receive them in the post. So many thanks, Tim, for the presentation today.
Thanks, Chris. That makes me very happy. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening to me and my presentation. I very much appreciate the chance to talk about it.
Thank you very much. And now I'd like to hand the meeting back to President Marion.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you to our MC, Bev Brock, our thanks giver, Barbara Yarandes, our special Muna guests, Neville Page, and winning students, Manik Barak and Samarthram Raghasvendra. And to our guest speakers, Kazuyoshi Matsunaga and Tim Stone. That was really fascinating. Also to our production team, Reg Smith, Peter Wishuson, Ari Talantis, and Dorothy Gilmore. And thank you to all our members, visitors, and guests for attending. I know some of you are still on holiday, but thank you for coming along. A reminder that next week we have an evening meeting and our guest speaker will be Cassandra Goodman, Thrive Global Facilitator and Coach, speaking on how connection and the practice of self-fidelity can improve individual and community well-being. I hope you can join us then. And I'd now like to close the meeting with Matt Harding in one of his earlier Dances for Peace around the world. You will see in the video his connection with people everywhere and the sheer joy of dancing with one another that is both inspiring and can perhaps lift our souls and help us remember pre-COVID days when things were a little freer. Please enjoy, and in the meantime, stay safe and spread kindness. Thank you.
That way, okay? Hold it steady.
Peter's ATV.
Bye, everyone.